Rambam, Monday, Erev Rosh Hashanah, one parak a day, Bikkurim, chapter 9. Mitzvahs Aseh, number 1, Aleph. Mitzvahs Aseh litin koseveach behema tehera l'koyin, hazroya v'alachayim. It is a mitzvahs Aseh, a positive commandment to give anyone who sacrifices an animal, a pure animal, should give the zroa and the lachayim and the keva, which is translated as like the foreleg and the jaw and part of the stomach. A moment here. Shenemar, as it says, Kohanim, and this will be the judgment. In other words, this will be what you will give to the Kohanim, to the priest. This is what's called in every other place the gifts, matana. This commandment always is applicable, whether the Beis Hamikdash is standing, whether the Beis Hamikdash is not standing. Whether you're in Eretz Yisrael in Israel or outside of Israel, and it only takes place with regular animals owned by people, but not by animals related that were dedicated to, consecrated to holiness, to kedusha. Anything which is consecrated and given to a hekdesh that had a mum kavua, which is a permanent blemish, before they were made hekdesh, and then they were redeemed because hekdesh doesn't take, it is not able to use blemished animals. Chayam matanas, you're obligated to give the gifts. On the other hand, if they had only a temporary blemish before they be made hekdesh, and later on in the other halachas we'll learn the difference between a permanent blemish versus a temporary blemish, or if they were made kedusha when they were unblemished and later on developed the blemish, and then they were niftu, they were redeemed. These animals are not obligated to give the gifts. Gimel. Safik Bechar Chamatas be called Sadif. It's a Safik Bechar. Bechar is the firstborn, which you have to give to a Kohen. And this animal, we don't know exactly if it was the firstborn or not. You still have to obligated to give these gifts. Why? If it's really a Bechar, the whole animal belongs to the Kohen. If you made a Bechar, Matanes of the Kohen. And if it's not a Bechar, then at least these gifts belong to the Kohen. This topic Bishnayim Lakach HaKohen Echa Bisafik. If there's a doubt about two different animals, and the Kohen took one out of doubt, the second one is then potter from the matanos. Asur from these gifts. Asur kimishazach be'arkayin v'nasim b'mum. It's as if the animal, the Kohen took the animal and returned it, so to say, to the Kohen, to the owner because of a blemish, which we learned before. That would cause it not to be obligated in the gifts, because there's two in doubt and he took one. That means he's giving the other one back to the owner, if you wish. But if it's a doubt about whether the animal is part of the meiser tithe, then it is potter, because we have a general principle that you have to prove before you can take out of someone's ownership. Something that somebody owns, we consider it theirs. In order to remove it from that ownership, you need to have proof. You can't just say it out of doubt. And since there's a doubt here, therefore you can't take it. And behemoths of kachim, which became puzzle, became invalid due to their blemish. As we said, they're not chayav, they're not obligated to bring these gifts. And and they got mixed into a herd of many other animals. Even if there's one animal of doubt of this situation, this scenario, it got mixed to 100 other animals. That all these animals are potter, not obligated. Because the same principle applies. Each one is a doubt. Maybe it's the one which is not obligated in the gifts. Therefore, in order for the Kohen to take it, he has to have proof, and he can't prove it. Hay echad who hashechet is kol peitim matan sachas bavad. When one person, the Rambam says, shechted, slaughtered all the animals, then at least one of the animals has to give the gifts to the Kohen, because we know at least one of them, rather only one animal becomes pater, but all the rest has to give. So in other words, if you slaughter them all by one person, if it's not one person, then each person states, prove it's mine and take it. You can't prove it's mine, you can't take it. But if it's one person, we know for sure that 100 are liable and one is not liable. So you have to give 100 animals worth of gifts, and one you don't give. Hey, only what we call a behema tahira, pure kosher animal. Shinemim shoyim seh, because it says in the verse, if it's an ox, if it's a sheep. If it's a hybrid born from a sheep and a goat, then you are chayv because they're both kosher animals. And something called a key, which is a doubtful, it's a hybrid of another status. We separate from that even though it's in doubt, because we don't really know where it comes from. If a deer and a goat together have a child, it then is chayiv and half the gifts. Because when the verse says imse, im is like an extra statement. Even if it's a little bit of a sheep, also, and since there was a little bit of the animal here they get, so then you go ahead and you have to give. Tayish haba ala tzivya v'la pater ben tanis. On the other hand, if it's a male goat with a deer, and then the Rambam says it's actually pater from all the matanas, not chayiv. You're not liable to give any of the gifts in that scenario. Vav 6. If you're slaughtering it to feed to non-Jews or to feed to your animals or for health purposes, you're still obligated to give the gifts. And if an animal belongs to two partners, they're also liable to give the gifts. Obligated rather to give the gift. Like it says, those who slaughter. Then we look at once it's slaughtered, that's what the determining factor is, and then they're chayiv, then they're obligated. If a person buys an animal from the fruit of Shavias, which is the 7th year, and there's certain things which you can do with the produce in certain of the 7th year, which will learn all those halachas in the right set. So then the Rambam says you are chayiv to give these gifts. You're obligated. If you're a Kohen or Levi and you own an animal, you're not obligated. Because it says from the people, and they're specific. The Rambam continues a doubt. If when we say Levium, Levites are considered part of the people with regards or not. Therefore, you're not. The Kohen cannot take, but if the Kohen went ahead and took, then he can't give back. And at this point, we reverse the rule, and now the Kohen has the ownership. And the Levi, in order to take it back, has to prove that a Levi is not part of the people that the process is. And since he can't prove that, it's a doubt. Therefore, he can't remove it from the Kohen. Does this apply? If a person is slaughtering it for himself, but a Kohen who gets a job as a butcher and he slaughters animals and he sells them in the marketplace. So give him a couple of weeks. Then for a few weeks he's still not chayiv, he's not obligated. After that, you force him to give up these gifts to other kohanim. He can't keep them to himself. And if he sets up a butcher shop, and they're not doing it in his backyard, but it's an official butcher shop, then you don't even give him the 2-3 weeks to see what he's doing, but you automatically make him give the gifts. Then if he refuses to give, you put him in what's called cherem. You ostracize him if you wish, until he goes ahead, you excommunicate him until he goes along. Because once he establishes a butcher shop, we know he's doing it for others, and the others are obligated. If someone was slaughtering an animal for a Kohen or for an Akum, for a non-Jew, then he's Pater. And someone who's a partnership with a Kohen, with a priest, has to mark which is his, in order that he will give, he's obligated to give the gifts from his portion. And if he doesn't make that mark, then nobody will know that the Kohen is part of his obligation. Therefore, have to give all of them. Therefore, if the Kohen is standing with him, interacting with the sale and the shochet, and the slaughter and the butcher, etc., he's standing there and everybody knows the Kohen's involved. He doesn't have to make any marks on it because people know it belongs to the Kohen. Rambam says, on the other hand, if you're owning it, if you're doing this interaction together with a non-Jew, that the Rambam said at the beginning of 10, that if you're slaughtering it for the non-Jew, you're exempt from these. You don't have to make any marks in the sense of the animal will let people know why. Since the non-Jew will share the news with everyone that he and the Jew have this partnership. So even though if he's not standing there, we know that he'll share it. 11. He's not Kayan. If the Kohen makes up a deal that he is going to be a partner except for the gifts, then the gifts belong to the Kohen because he's not a partner in them and he can take them. Since he says except, automatically he says that he's separating the gifts, and since he's separating them, they become his. But if he says on condition that they're mine, the gifts belong to this Jewish owner. He can give to anyone he wants, any Cohen that he wants. In other words, when he says and he's interacting with the gifts and he's still holding on some level of relationship, I own this except for this, except for that, etc. But as soon as he says, "Oh, I want you to give it to me on condition as mine," then that's not the same case. So Rambam continues, when someone says on condition, they're not leaving themselves any connection. It's like 100% since he didn't leave himself any connection, but saying, I need you to do this, and the condition that you do this means it's all you. Therefore, I have no ownership, then I cannot take these gifts, and therefore it belongs to Yisrael to give to whoever he wants. You base 12. If the Kohen was only a partner for the head of the animal, so then the other parts are pater. Should to be out pater if he's in the hand, the foreleg, rather the front legs of the animal, then he's pater from. He's not obligated to the back legs. Should to be pater if he says he's a partner in the stomach, then he's pater. Then he's not obligated to what we call the keva. Some translate it as the maw, etc. Some part of the inner stomach, which is one of the gifts. If the Kohen says, my animal is all mine, but the head belongs to you, he's obligated to give for the lechi, which was the jaw. Because the part which belongs to the Yisrael, which is the head, has a gift which he is obligated to give to. Gimel. 13. And a convert converts and he has an animal which was slaughtered. If it was slaughtered before he converted, then he's not obligated. It was owned by a non-Jew. And if it's after he converted, then he's obligated. If we don't know exactly when it was slaughtered, he left his herd and he went to town. While he was at town, he converted, and he comes back, he finds it slaughtered. We don't know if it happened before or after. He is not obligated for the same principle we said above, that in order to remove something from the ownership of someone, you need to have an absolute. You can't have just doubt. Here there's doubt. Doubt does not remove from ownership. Yadalad, 14. An animal which has not given the gifts yet, they're not separated. These three gifts that we're talking about, you're still allowed to eat from it because it's not similar to tevel, that where stuff is not given yet for Truvas and Meisers, we're not given. Shematan is going to move Dalamatan Atzman, also so Lachlan. El Bishus because the gifts are already separate. They're distinct, they're different parts of the body. It's not like there when you mix up all the produce, you have to remove some of the produce. Here there's a distinct, there's a jaw, there's the cave, there's a part of the stomach, etc. And therefore, They belong to the Cohen already, and the Cohen, the only way that you can eat them is with the permission of the Cohen because they're already separate. If he went ahead and he ate them, or damages them, or sells them, he doesn't have to return the money. No, he doesn't have to make a restitution. Why? Because nobody can claim this money belonged to them. In other words, if there's nobody who says this is mine, then who are you paying back to? But because any Kohen can claim it. But Kohen also whoever bought them, whoever bought this gift, which we said you shouldn't sell, you have to take home. The guy went ahead and sold it anyways, he can eat it. Why? Because since they're stolen, they have no new ownership. If they have new ownership, they become like a regular piece of meat. The Kohen, so to say, loses the ownership and loses the right to it. Tells about 15. If he tells a butcher something, the stomach's the inner parts of the animal, and inside there was this other matanas, these parts of these gifts. So you can give it to the Kohen, but you did not decrease the price because of it. If you did it by weight, then you do decrease the price because obviously the weight would decrease the price. If I say I'm buying that, so to say, as is, I'm buying all it is. I have to give it away. But if I say by weight, then I want a certain weight, you can't count the weight. Says 16. That if a person goes ahead and sends meat to his friend, he doesn't have to be concerned if there are gifts involved that this person might steal them. They have to in a place that has no Cohen, what we call Ma'ula. I'm sorry, if he has no Cohen, so what should he do? So he should go ahead and figure out the cost of these gifts and eat them, but save the money to give to another Cohen at another time, because otherwise the meat will go bad. You sign 17 or so you want to give to any Cohen you're allowed to give. So if you want to divide and give to more than one Cohen, you're allowed to, but you cannot divide the actions, the distinct part. You can't take the jaw and cut it in half. You give the jaw to one, and the stomach part to another, and the four legs to another, right? Because it says Tita Lo, you should give them Shiba Kidei Matonik. It says you have to give them something of value. The half a thing is not of value. On the other hand, if it's a large ox and you divide the portions of the gifts into half, there'll still be a sizable, respectable portion, then you're allowed to do it. The point is you got to give the Kohen something of value. What is considered the foreleg? So the Rambam says now Israel should mean in a perish akuva and kaf shel yadai. The right foreleg is the portion from the upper joint until the ankle joint. It's two limbs and they're connected, and they both go to the Kohen. We're talking about the jaw, the lachayim. So that refers to the bones until where they can stick out with the tongue between the bones back to there. All of that goes to the Kohen. So again, the Rambam said there's a protrusion of where the mouth comes out with the tongue between the bones. All of that goes to the Kohen. You test 19. You don't take them, pour boiling water on them, the Rambam says, in order to take off the skin, nor the hair rather, the outer layer. Nor do we take off the skin, but we give it to the Kohen as it is with the skin and with the wool or whatever is outside on it. Where we give it the stomach part, there's chelav, the certain kind of fats that are there. We give them all to the Kohen. Kohanim have accustomed themselves that they will leave the fat. They leave the fat of the keva, the stomach part of the gift, and they give it back to the owners. But technically, you're supposed to give it all to the Kohen. Chav. A Kohen, a lady Kohen, can eat them even if she's married to Yisrael. Other gifts, once you marry out, so to say, you can't have. Here you can't because it's not a certain level of kedushin and they can be eaten by people. And not just that, the Rambam says that the wife of this lady Cohen can also eat them because of her. But if it's a halola, that's a Cohen who's born through a non-Cohen allowed relationship, cannot eat because they've lost their lineage and their ability to be considered part of Kohanim in this regard. If the Kohen wants to sell them or give them as gifts, these gifts that were given to him, the cable, the chaim, the throa, these parts, he can sell it or give it as a gift to fil akum or lachilam l'klav macham shem b'yishakval. And he can even sell it to a non-Jew or feed it to his dogs or to his animals because they don't have a level of kedusha once they've been given as a gift. Chaf Aleph 21. That if a Kohen has friends who always give him their gifts, there's a group of friends, and you're the Kohen in the group will always going to give you the gift. If he wants to, he can give it back as a gift to the Yisrael to one of his friends. Even though he didn't receive it. In other words, he can say, from now on, this gift you can keep. And anybody in the group who slaughters her animal knows to give their gift, not to the Kohen, but to the Yisrael, to the Jew, the regular Jew who the Kohen said, I want to give them to. The Rambam puts an interesting provision that this should be Yisrael, a regular Jew who is in poverty and doesn't have how to buy money or resources to buy meat. And the Kohen has to be his friend. But if he was a servant, this Kohen was an employee of some sort of this regular Yisrael, he cannot give it to him until he receives it. In other words, when you don't receive it, we allow you to give a gift to someone who needs it and is your friend. But if he's not someone who needs it, or he's not your friend, he's your employer, etc., then you actually need to receive it. Once you receive it, you can give it to whoever you want to. Base 22. A Kohen should not grab them and he should not ask for them outright, but he should wait and take them in a very respectable way. When there are many Kohanim at the butcher, what we call the modest ones would kind of step back and pull their hands back, and those who are trying to get the meat, those who are trying to grab the meat, go ahead and grab it. If it's a new Cohen in town and people don't know he's a Cohen, even though he's a quiet person who normally steps away from grabbing the meat, he should go take the meat so people will know that he is a Cohen. And they should only eat these meats that they given. The Rambam gives them the recipe. You should roast them with mustard. Because it says you should eat it in a kind of an anointed way, in a royal way. That means the way the kings eat them, and that is roasted with mustard. And with that, we finish the parak.